Chapter 8:12. Generally speaking, only professional racers had the right to be banned from competitions. However, Lin Yan shouldn't have been a professional racer. Otherwise, given her abilities, she wouldn't have been unknown in the racing industry. Yeah, sister. How did you get banned from competitions? Why didn't I know anything about it? He Lufeng glanced at Lin Yan. Lin Yan glanced at He Lufeng and replied calmly, "Who told you that I've been banned from competitions?" Mo Shuyan, Yin Xian, and the others were startled by Lin Yan's words. He Lufeng slapped his thigh, his eyes filled with excitement. He smiled and said, Look, I knew it. That bastard uncle wasn't telling the truth. How could my sister be banned from the competition? That old bastard is deliberately slandering her and disrupting the team's morale. I think so too. Mo Shuyan stroked his chin and nodded. Lin Yan glanced at the two of them and replied, I was banned by a foreign racing association. Mo Shuyan and He Lufeng froze when they heard her. They couldn't snap back to their senses. A moment later, He Lufeng's face was filled with disbelief. He hadn't been banned by the Chinese guild, but by an overseas guild. Sister, what's the difference between the two? He Lufeng glanced at Lin Yan. Hold on, goddess. Are you joking? You've been banned from competitions? Mo Shuyan asked Lin Yan hastily. Would I joke about such a thing? Lin Yan replied nonchalantly. Mo Shuyan was speechless. All right then. Goddess, tell me first. Are you banned permanently or temporarily? Mo Shuyan still held on to a glimmer of hope. As long as she wasn't banned permanently, nothing would be a problem. What they were most afraid of was being banned permanently. Permanently? Lin Yan grinned. Mo Shuyan was speechless. He Lufeng was speechless. Yin Xian was speechless. Mo Shuyan and He Lufeng glanced at each other. How could they still laugh when they had been banned from the competition forever? Goddess, aren't you an actress? How did you get banned from competing overseas? Were you a racer overseas before? Mo Shuyan asked with a frown. Lin Yan nodded and replied, Yeah, I used to be a racer overseas for a period of time. No wonder. Mo Shuyan fell into deep thought after listening to Lin Yan. He had found it odd. Given Lin Yan's ability, she couldn't be a mere racing enthusiast. The fact that she had managed to lift the entire He family team and make it a top team was proof of her skills. In the end, before she had become an actress, she had been a racer overseas for a period of time. Goddess, what did you do to be banned by a foreign racing association? Mo Shuyan asked curiously. Based on his understanding of Lin Yan, Mo Shuyan found it hard to imagine what she had done to deserve such a severe ban from international competitions. I consumed illegal drugs. Lin Yan answered honestly. Mo Shuyan. He Lufeng was speechless. Yin Xian. The corners of Mo Shuyan's mouth twitched. He had a feeling that Lin Yan was teasing him. Chapter 8:13. Taking illegal drugs? Was there even a dime's worth of relationship between illegal drugs and racing? If it had been any other sport, it wouldn't have mattered. What was the purpose of taking illegal drugs? Sister, did you give the racer illegal drugs? He Lufeng asked solemnly. I'm on He Lufeng's side this time. Goddess, did you give your racer illegal drugs? Mo Shuyan stared at Lin Yan. Racing? Taking? Illegal drugs? Yin Xian stared at the two of them in confusion. He couldn't understand what they were saying. Yin Xian, what's so hard to understand? A racer can run faster if he takes illegal drugs. Mo Shuyan grinned. Yin Xian was speechless. He Lufeng studied Yin Xian's confused expression and said, Isn't that hard to understand? It's already ridiculous enough for a racer to take illegal drugs. It's even more ridiculous for a racer to take illegal drugs. If you say that a racer can run faster if he takes illegal drugs, everyone can understand that. If a racer takes illegal drugs, he would be too excited and crash his car. What else could he do? Yeah, He Lufeng is right. Mo Shuyan nodded. I've never heard of a racer taking illegal drugs in my life. It's just like the college entrance examination. Everyone can understand if you study hard through the night. Have you ever heard of anyone who passed their college entrance examination by taking illegal drugs? Could it be that after taking illegal drugs, you'll be well versed in the past and know everything in the universe? That's a completely different matter. He Lufeng spoke eloquently. I understand, Yin nodded. Hilufeng's explanation was really easy to understand. It's like a racer is a racer and illegal drugs are like water. If you add water to the fuel tank, wouldn't that be something a fool would do? If you want to add it, you have to refuel first. Hilufeng added. Air. Yin glanced at Hilufeng. Brother Feng, you don't have to explain. I understand. Goddess, you're not joking with me? Did you really take illegal drugs and get banned? Mo Xuyan glanced at Lin Yin doubtfully. Do you think that's ridiculous? Lin Yin grinned. It's not just ridiculous. It's simply ridiculous. Mo Xuyan quipped. Yes, that's nonsense. Hilufeng added. Actually, even Lin Yin found it ridiculous, let alone Hilufeng and Mo Xuyan. She could accept being permanently banned from racing, but being banned because of illegal drugs. F***ck. She was a racer. Who had ever seen someone run to the gas tank without refueling? However, no matter what, she didn't want to talk about it anymore. If that's the case, why are we still building a team? Hilufeng was indignant. Of course. Lin Yin replied softly. Although I've been banned from competing, I can't be banned from being a boss. My team has nothing to do with my ban. Yeah, you're right. The most I can do is... Goddess, you must be joking. What's the point of building a new team if you don't compete? Mo Xuyan suddenly felt that something was amiss. Lin Yan's value lay in her racing skills. No matter how he looked at it, Lin Yan didn't look like a boss. It's alright. I have a plan. Lin Yan chuckled softly. Since Lin Yan had put it that way, Mo Xuyan didn't say anything. End of chapter. Chapter 8:14. Oh yeah, building a team requires a lot of money. Sister, do you have enough money? Hilufeng glanced at Lin Yan. I don't. Lin Yan shook her head. I need to find sponsors and investors. She could ask for anything but money. I forgot. I'm going to look for He Xiong now. I want to withdraw my investment and invest in our new team. Mo Xuyan blurted out hastily. He had invested a lot of money in the He family team. Now that he had decided to leave, he had to get his money back. Don't. Lin Yan shook her head hastily. Are you silly? The He family team has become a top team, and Lin Shuya's team has taken over. You can get a lot of money from your investment. If you withdraw your investment now, wouldn't you be killing the goose that lays the golden eggs? We can wait for the chicken to lay the eggs. That way, we can get a lot of money every month and use it to build our team. Mo Xuyan was taken aback. He pondered for a moment before he gave Lin Yan a thumbs up. Brilliant. Brilliant. Mo Xuyan had thought that Lin Yan wasn't cut out to be a boss, but now, he realized that he had been wrong. He had been gravely wrong. Lin Yan had the face of a profiteer. How could she use the He family team to support her new team? What kind of scheme was that? Oh yeah, Xiaofeng and Mo Xuyan, you guys need to look for a venue and an office space. These are all necessary for the team, instructed Lin Yan. Alright, leave it to me. Hilufeng nodded. After that, the three of them went home. Cloud Manor Lin Yan went straight to her room after she returned. She was startled when she entered the room. She remembered that her room had been a mess before she had left. However, it was clean and tidy now. Before Lin Yan could think further, the orange kitten and the ragdoll shrieked at her. The cat food had been emptied before she had left. However, Lin Yan realized that the cat bowl was already full. Lin Yan's smile froze. Cat litter. Cat litter was for cats to poop with. It wasn't food. Who was it? Which idiot had placed cat litter in the cat's bowl like cat food? Also, what was that black liquid in the cat's water dispenser? Lin Yan hastily stepped forward and dabbed her finger in it before placing it on the tip of her nose. The corners of Lin Yan's mouth twitched. She finally knew what the black liquid in the water bottle was. Who put the damn cat litter and the damn Coke in the food bowl and the water bowl respectively? No wonder Prosperous and Lucky Fortune and Lucky Prosperous were screaming like that. Lin Yan stared at the cat's whiskers, which were covered in cat litter and Coke. Lin Yan reckoned that the cats had mistaken the cat litter for cat food and the cola for water. After taking a sip, she suddenly realized that something was amiss. Lin Yan rose and headed to the bathroom. After cleaning up the two cats, she ended up with her hands full of Coke and cat litter. When Lin Yan opened the bathroom door, she froze in shock. She saw that the bathroom was filled with mist. Lin Yin could vaguely make out a slender figure. However, the mist was too thick, so she couldn't see it clearly. Lin Yan's mind went blank. Sorry, I entered the wrong room. Lin Yin hastily apologized. Just as she was about to turn around and leave, a pair of large hands tugged at her. Instinctively, Lin Yin wanted to dodge, but the mist dissipated. The man, who was wearing a bathrobe, appeared before her. Chapter 8:15. The man's black hair was still wet, and he was wrapped in a loose bathrobe. His eyes were as bright as the stars as he gazed at the girl, who was in a daze. You're back. Pei Yuqing held Lin Yan's hand as they were surrounded by mist. A faint smile hung on the man's face. F***ck. Instinctively, Lin Yin glanced at Pei Yuqing's face. His features, his figure, his aura. Not good. Her HP bar received a critical hit of 10,000 points, instantly emptying. Pei Yuqing's appearance was too tempting to commit a crime. Lin Yin snapped back to her senses and shook her head hurriedly to clear her mind. What kind of images had she been imagining? Amitabha, she had sinned. Mr. Pei? Lin Yin glanced at Pei Yuqing in surprise. Lin Yin had never imagined that Pei Yuqing would suddenly appear in her room in the bathroom. She hadn't been mentally prepared at all. Why? Is it strange? The corners of Pei Yuqing's mouth curled into an inexplicable smile. It's not strange. It's just sudden. Lin Yin felt a little awkward. It was strange. Had she seen anything? That damned mist. She didn't seem to have seen anything. Lin Yin was startled. What was she thinking about? Oh yeah, did you tidy my room? Lin Yin suddenly recalled something as she asked Pei Yuqing. It's a little messy. Pei Yuqing replied. Lin Yin was speechless. This was too embarrassing. She should have tidied up the room before she left. Wait a minute. So the cat litter in the cat's bowl, and the cola in the water bottle were also Pei Yuqing's masterpieces? The retarded person she had wanted to strangle to death was the man in front of her? However, Lin Yin didn't think that Pei Yuqing would be able to do such a thing given his intelligence. However, it was hard to say. Pei Yuqing's astonishing culinary skills were a miracle that no one would dare to imagine. Based on Lin Yan's understanding of Pei Yuqing, he was almost omnipotent, except for his common sense. A person like Pei Yuqing, who had never raised a cat before, couldn't tell the difference between cat litter and cat food. He should be able to treat the cola as water, right? Before Lin Yin could mull over this, the man pulled her out of the bathroom and into the bedroom. Oh right. Mr. Pei, why is there no one in the manor? Lin Yin asked Pei Yuqing. When he returned, the manor was deserted, and there was not a single person in sight. Yes, Pei Yuqing replied softly. We're dismissed today. It's just you and me. Huh. Lin Yan's expression was odd. Why had they dismissed all the people in the manor? Where are Ling Yu, Xing Chun and Pei Yutong? None of them are here, replied Pei Yuqing. Lin Yin was speechless. Hence, they were the only two people in this huge manor at the moment. Mr. Pei, what happened? Asked Lin Yin curiously. Pei Yuqing fell silent for a few seconds before he grinned at Lin Yin. Why? Isn't that good? Lin Yin shook her head. It's not that. Don't you want to be alone with me? Pei Yuqing pressed on. Lin Yin was startled for a moment before she shook her head furiously. No. I'm willing. It was too scary. They are very cute. Pei Yuqing glanced at the rag doll and the orange kitten before Lin Yin could speak. End of this chapter. Chapter 8:16. Get Rich and Rich kittens stared at Pei Yuqing with puffy eyes, as though they had been wronged. Mr. Pei, the cat litter in the cat bowl, and the cola in the water dispenser. Did you do it? Lin Yin probed. Pei Yuqing fell into silence after Lin Yin spoke. Pei Yuqing glanced at the cat bowl and water dispenser, which had been replaced. It wasn't me. Pei Yuqing denied everything after a second. Lin Yin heaved a sigh of relief. I don't think Mr. Pei would do such a thing. Then who was it? Lin Yin rested her chin on her hand as she pondered. Forget it, Pei Yuqing replied. Pei Yutong. Lin Yin was speechless. It was indeed him. Lin Yin didn't hesitate or suspect anything. She instinctively believed Pei Yuqing's words. If Pei Yutong had been the one who had done this, Lin Yin wouldn't have found it strange at all. It would have seemed as though Pei Yutong's existence was to do such strange things. Lin Yin whipped out her phone and sent Pei Yutong a text. The text read, "Lad, you're dead meat." Pei Yutong replied after a moment, "Lightning and wind." Lin Yin typed, "Just you wait." Lightning and wind typed, "Huh?" Lin Yin typed, "Gun." Avoiding lightning and wind. Ah? Lin Yin couldn't be bothered to talk to Pei Yutong anymore. When he came back, she had to teach him a lesson. She had to show him what the cat litter was for. "Are you sleepy?" Pei Yuqing peered at Lin Yin and chuckled softly. "A little." Lin Yin nodded and asked, "Mr. Pei, are you going back?" "Right here," replied Pei Yuqing. Lin Yin stared at Pei Yuqing in confusion. What had Pei Yuqing said? Had she heard wrongly, or hadn't he expressed himself clearly? "Right here? You can sleep here tonight," Pei Yuqing added. Lin Yin was certain that she hadn't heard wrongly. Pei Yuqing hadn't expressed himself wrongly. For some reason, Lin Yan's heart thumped wildly. What was going on? He wasn't mentally prepared at all. What if that damned lecher possessed him? Wouldn't Pei Yuqing be in trouble tonight? This is committing a sin. Pei Yuqing switched off the lights and switched on the bedside lamp. Pei Yuqing lay on the boat and glanced at Lin Yin. He chuckled softly. "Come here." Lin Yin instinctively shook her head. She shook her head so quickly that she almost shook it off. "No, no, no. Mr. Pei, I like to kick my blanket off at night. I will definitely affect your sleep quality." Lin Yin replied hastily. "How about this? Mr. Pei, you sleep on the bed and I'll sleep on the couch." Yes, she slept on the sofa. She loved the sofa. She felt uncomfortable if she didn't sleep on the sofa for a day. "It's fine. It won't affect me." Pei Yuqing grinned at Lin Yin. Lin Yin was speechless. She had treated her good intentions as malicious intent. She was doing this for Pei Yuqing's sake. There was a consciousness that coveted Pei Yuqing's beauty. The most terrifying thing was that it could attach itself to her body. What if? Lin Yin didn't dare to continue thinking about it. Besides, Lin Yin was puzzled. Why would Pei Yuqing suddenly want to sleep with her? This was too terrifying. End of this chapter. Chapter 8:17. Pei Yuqing was lying on the bed with a heavy book in his hands. He was staring intently at it. Lin Yin was speechless. So Pei Yuqing had come here to read? Lin Yin couldn't understand why he hadn't gone to the study. Lin Yin could tell that Pei Yuqing was planning to spend the whole night reading. "Aren't you going to sleep?" Pei Yuqing put down the book and adjusted his glasses gently as he spoke to Lin Yin. Lin Yin shook her head furiously. "I'm not sleepy, Mr. Pei. To be honest, I'm a night owl. I don't feel sleepy until the wee hours of the morning. Staying up late has become a daily occurrence for me." She would feel uncomfortable if she didn't stay up late. Pei Yuqing grinned meaningfully at her, but didn't say anything else. He continued to read the heavy book. "Mr. Pei, what are you reading?" Lin Yin couldn't help but glance at Pei Yuqing. The book in Pei Yuqing's hands looked strange. It didn't seem to be a book in the market. The book looked old and didn't have a title. "This book?" Pei Yuqing put the book down gently and grinned at Lin Yin. "Do you want to know?" Lin Yin was speechless. She didn't really want to, but she felt a little awkward. She was just trying to find a topic to talk about. "Tell me about it." Lin Yin stroked her chin. "Come here." Pei Yuqing gazed at Lin Yin and spoke softly. Lin Yin pondered for a few seconds before she cautiously walked to the bed like a kitten. In the end, Lin Yin had no choice but to lie down quietly beside Pei Yuqing. Lin Yin realized that she had never been so close to Pei Yuqing before. Even if she had been close to him in the past, she hadn't been as relaxed as she was today. Lin Yan's eyes darted from the book to Pei Yuqing. She had to admit that Pei Yuqing didn't look as intimidating as he usually did. He was wearing loose pajamas as he lay on the bed. Coupled with his gold-rimmed glasses and the book in his hands, he gave off the vibe of a lazy scholar. This face, this aura. Those top celebrities in the industry, who relied on their looks to make a living, couldn't be compared at all. It was as if they were products of two completely different worlds. "Are you curious about me or the book?" Pei Yuqing glanced at Lin Yin with a faint smile on his face. "I'm curious." Lin Yin blurted out. Pei Yuqing replied, "Really? If you are curious about me, what do you want to know?" Lin Yan was speechless. What she wanted to know the most was why he didn't read in the study, but on her bed. Mr. Pei, what book are you reading? Lin Yan hastily changed the topic. She had almost been led astray by him. The key. Pei Yuqing grinned. Key. Lin Yan was startled when she heard that. The key to human evolution. Pei Yuqing added when he noticed Lin Yan's confusion. Human evolution. Lin Yan grinned. It's too far away. Is it far away? Perhaps it has already happened, replied Pei Yuqing. Do you want to know what the key to human evolution is? He pressed on before Lin Yan could speak. Lin Yan rested her chin on her hand and pondered. How would she know what the key to human evolution was? If she knew, why would she still be here? She would have become the richest woman in the world. End of this chapter. Chapter 8:18. Here. Pei Yuqing's eyes met Lin Yan's as he gently tapped his head with his finger. Temple? Lin Yan asked curiously. Pei Yuqing was speechless. It's the brain. Pei Yuqing explained patiently. Lin Yan was speechless. She couldn't have said that. She must have been influenced by Pei Yutong or He Lefeng. An ordinary person's brain can only be developed by 5%. A genius's brain can be developed by 7 to 8%. Pei Yuqing said softly to Lin Yan. Mr. Pei, your brain must have been developed to 100%, right? Lin Yan grinned. Pei Yuqing was startled at first. When he snapped back to his senses, he couldn't help but shake his head and smile. He touched Lin Yan's glabella gently. No one has reached that level. Mr. Pei, you must be able to reach that level, replied Lin Yan. If the brain is developed to 100%, it might no longer be within the scope of a human, replied Pei Yuqing. Lin Yan's curiosity was piqued. The development of the human brain. What could it bring? A 100% development was beyond the scope of a human. For some reason, Lin Yan's mind was suddenly filled with images of that terrifying laboratory. What had been researched in that unknown laboratory? Was it related to the brain? Mr. Pei, what would happen if the brain was developed to 100%? Lin Yan asked curiously. Lin Yan didn't have any special research on the brain. However, ordinary people didn't use their brains very well. Lin Yan naturally knew this, but she didn't know as much as Pei Yuqing did. She had even found a book to study it. 100%. I'm not sure. Pei Yuqing replied calmly. Perhaps when one reaches 100%, one can completely control their body. Every cell in their body won't age or die. They can turn into anything. Lin Yan was startled when she heard Pei Yuqing. That's too incredible. Is that still human? Even a god can't do that. Perhaps they are even stronger than a god. Pei Yuqing quipped. They can change their cells and genes at will. They can become an eagle that soars in the sky, or an overlord of the deep sea. They are omnipotent. Lin Yan naturally wouldn't believe Pei Yuqing's words. However, back then, Lin Yan had seen too many unbelievable things in that laboratory. Perhaps human evolution had already begun long ago, but ordinary people simply could not come into contact with it. Do I have to fully develop it to have that ability? Asked Lin Yan instinctively. If an ordinary person's brain is developed to more than 10%, they might become the pioneers of human evolution and possess some special abilities. Pei Yuqing replied. In that case, how can we develop the brain? Lin Yan pressed on. Pei Yuqing fell silent for a long time. Pei Yuqing's eyes landed on Lin Yan again. Congenital or an external force that changed it? Was it a change caused by external forces? Lin Yan couldn't help but frown. If that was the case, had the laboratory been affected by external forces? Mr. Pei, can I borrow this book? Lin Yan's interest in the book was piqued. Chapter 8:19. Pei Yuqing didn't say anything as he glanced outside the window. At the same time, Pei Yuqing's eyes turned cold. Pei Yuqing got up and took off his loose pajamas. He then changed into his own clothes. Follow me closely. After changing, Pei Yuqing told Lin Yan, who was puzzled. Although she didn't know what had happened, Lin Yan nodded instinctively. She got up from the bed and followed Pei Yuqing closely. Tonight seemed to be a little unusual. Pei Yuqing had dismissed everyone in the manor and come to her room. He had even asked her to follow him closely. Is there something wrong? Lin Yin followed Pei Yuqing out of the room. It was pitch black outside the manor. The cold wind was blowing, and it was a little chilly. Pei Yuqing stood at a corner of the manor and scanned his surroundings. The corners of Pei Yuqing's mouth curled up into an inexplicable smile. All of a sudden, Lin Yin heard a beeping sound coming from all directions. She had heard this sound many times, but nothing good had happened each time. Pei Yuqing picked up a stone casually. A second later, there was a whooshing sound. The stone was like an arrow that had left the bow as it struck somewhere in the darkness. Boom! A scream was heard. The black figure fell from the wall and crashed into the manor. Damn it! The black figure cursed under his breath as he got up and turned to flee. However, Pei Yuqing had already vanished and was standing in front of the black figure. Who are you? The black figure frowned as he watched Pei Yuqing warily. Pei Yuqing stood rooted to the spot and adjusted his glasses gently. His eyes then landed on the black figure. The black figure felt as though an invisible hand had clenched his heart when Pei Yuqing sized him up. Even his breathing started to quicken. The black figure didn't know what had happened, but the man in front of him gave him an immense sense of oppression. It was as though there was a substantial difference between them that made it difficult for him to breathe. You came to my house and asked me who I am. Pei Yuqing stared at the shadow with a smirk on his face as he spoke. I understand. You aren't an ordinary person. We are from the Hunters Guild. This has nothing to do with you. Do you understand what I mean? The shadow didn't seem to be afraid of Pei Yuqing. All evolved humans knew about the Hunters Guild. No matter how high one's level was, it was nothing in front of the Hunters Guild. It's that woman. The shadow's eyes landed on Lin Yin, who was standing not too far away. The mission this time was to find that woman. There was no mistake. It has nothing to do with you. If you know what's good for you, scram. The shadow glanced at Pei Yuqing before it darted towards Lin Yin. However, before the black shadow could advance any further, its hair was grabbed by someone. Swoosh! In the next second, the black figure was flung away. The black figure's body drew an arc in the air before crashing heavily into a large tree in the manor. Another miserable howl came from the black shadow's mouth. The black figure, who was leaning against the tree, rubbed the back of his head. His expression changed drastically. My thick and beautiful hair. The target has appeared. Take that woman away. The black figure couldn't care less about anything else as it bellowed. As soon as the black figure finished speaking, dozens of black shadows appeared from all directions and dashed toward Lin Yin simultaneously. Even Lin Yin was shocked when she saw this. What was going on? Chapter 820. Lin Yin was dumbfounded by the commotion. She had been kind all these years. She had helped dozens of people, if not thousands. How could she have enemies? Who were they trying to scare to death, with such a dense black mass of them? Don't move. One of the shadows approached Lin Yin and glared at her coldly. Bang! Lin Yin didn't waste any time and punched the shadow's nose. The shadow stumbled a few steps back. If you don't move, you will be a tortoise, Lin Yin hissed at the shadow. The black figure steadied himself, touched his nose, and looked at the blood on his hand. This woman! How dare she hit him in the nose? She had even bled? You'd *M woman. How dare you hit my nose? The shadow gritted his teeth. You're in big trouble. Don't come near me. Lin Yin couldn't help but take 2 steps back as she stared at the murderous figure. Now you know how to be afraid. The shadow sneered coldly when he saw the fear on Lin Yan's face. The shadow had just approached Lin Yin when Lin Yin punched him in the left eye. Bang! The shadow stumbled a few steps back. I told you not to come near me. Lin Yin glared at the shadow as she spoke. The corners of the shadow's mouth twitched. This woman. Did she think he was a monkey? She had looked terrified just now. Let's attack together. The shadow shouted at the people around him. I have no feud with you. How dare you try to harm me? Don't come near me. Lin Yin was startled when she saw the 7 of them dashing toward her. If you dare resist, you will die. One of the shadows bellowed. Lin Yin suddenly stepped forward and punched the shadow in the face, as everyone watched in bewilderment. Bang! The black shadow flew out in response. Lin Yin yelled, Don't come near me. The rest of the shadows glanced at each other in bewilderment. This woman. Was she? Bang! One of the shadows was punched by Lin Yin again. He followed in the footsteps of the previous person. I told you not to come over. Lin Yin retorted. The shadow crawled to his feet with difficulty, as though he had been hit by a huge hammer. His head felt heavy and groggy as he glared at Lin Yin indignantly. I didn't even move. Bang! Pa! One of the two shadows had been punched by Lin Yin, while the other had been slapped by Lin Yin. One of its teeth had fallen out. Are you King sick? Did we move? The shadow stared at Lin Yin in shock. How was this possible? The level displayed on the testing device shouldn't have this kind of combat power. This woman was a complete idiot. Even if he didn't die from this blow, he would be crippled. If they had known this would happen, the guild would have sent a higher-ranked player to complete this quest. Pei Yuqing sauntered over to Lin Yin. Mr. Pei, I'm so scared. Lin Yin hid behind him like a kitten. Pei Yuqing scanned the ground. Ouch! Ouch, my nose is broken. My teeth. Where are my ears? Did she pull them off? Why can't I feel them? Ah, you crazy woman. Don't come near me. Pei Yuqing was speechless. Chapter 821. Dozens of men in black were glaring at Lin Yin furiously. If looks could kill, Lin Yin would have been sliced into pieces. This woman did not play by the rules. She had clearly looked very afraid. But in the end, she was the one who struck the hardest and most ruthlessly. She had repeatedly told them not to go over. And indeed, she looked like a weak woman. But in the end, no one moved. She came up and punched whoever she saw. Her fists were like huge iron hammers. Those who were hit by her fists were half dead. The most incomprehensible and unacceptable thing was that ever since this woman had displayed her hammer-like battle prowess, they hadn't taken even half a step forward. This woman, with a face full of fear, shouted for them not to go over. But at the same time, she chased after them, using her hammer-like fists to beat them up. What was wrong with this world? Especially now, she was clearly as strong as a hammer, but in front of this man, she was acting like a weak woman. This woman must be a freaking drama queen. However, she did seem to be an actress. Hands. He turned around and glanced at Lin Yin. Lin Yin extended her hand in confusion. He held her hand gently and stroked it gently. Does it hurt? Yeah. Lin Yin nodded, looking aggrieved. The man in black whose front teeth had been knocked out. The man in black who had his ear pulled off. The man in black whose nose was broken. The man in black whose leg was crippled. They were here to complete the mission, not to eat dog food. Was there still any law? Was there still justice in this world? They were the ones who were almost hammered to death. This man actually asked this woman if her hand hurt. A second later, the man turned around and scanned the people who had been beaten by Lin Yin. His voice was as cold as ice. Apologize. The men in black. This man was poisonous, right? Did this man not understand the situation? Had he been bewitched by this woman? In the end, who should apologize to whom? However, she was forced by the man's indescribable power. The man in black whose front teeth had been knocked out said, I'm sorry, my teeth knocked against your hand. The black-clothed man whose ear had been pulled off said, I apologize. Your fingers must have used too much strength. The black-clothed man whose nose was broken said, I was wrong. My nosebleed dirted your hand. The man in black got up hastily and limped away. He picked up the shoe that Lin Yin had accidentally kicked away earlier. Sister, your shoe. Lin Yin put on her shoes and scanned them. Who are you? Why are you looking for me? I'm just telling you that we're from the Hunters Guild. As for why, we won't say it even if we die. The black shadow whose nose was broken said hurriedly, Hunters Guild? Lin Yin furrowed her eyebrows. Can we go now? One of the black-robed men looked at Pei Yuqing in fear. However, Pei Yuqing merely glanced at them, as though he wasn't interested in talking to them. Leave. No matter who you are. Don't come looking for trouble with me again. I'm not a pushover. Lin Yin hissed coldly. Everyone looked at each other. What did this woman say? Bully her? They swore that there wouldn't be a next time. Even if they were beaten to death, they wouldn't want to see this woman again. End of this chapter. Chapter 822. Big Brother. One of the figures seemed indignant. Before he left, he glanced at Pei Yucheng. Don't be fooled by this woman. She is very strong. Her hands are like hammers. Look at how we beat her. She isn't weak at all. Lin Yan's eyes widened in fury as she glared at the person who had spoken. Lin Yan glanced at Pei Yucheng and sounded aggrieved. It's not like that. That man's teeth bumped into my hand. His front teeth fell off and another man's nose broke. His nose bumped into my knee. Pei Yucheng was speechless. Does your knee hurt? Pei Yucheng gazed at Lin Yan and asked gently. Yes. Lin Yan nodded repeatedly. Does it still hurt? Pei Yucheng gently massaged Lin Yan's knee. It doesn't hurt anymore, replied Lin Yan. The man in black, whose nose had been broken, was on the verge of breaking down. The corners of his mouth twitched as though he had 1,000 words to say. In the end he said, Big brother, big sister, goodbye. After the men in black helped each other out of the manor, Lin Yan stared at Pei Yucheng. Mr. Pei, did you know that someone was looking for trouble with me? Lin Yan felt that Pei Yucheng was acting strangely today. First, he had dismissed the people in the manor. Now he wanted to stay in her room. Something didn't seem right. Sleep early. They won't be coming anytime soon. Pei Yucheng didn't answer Lin Yan's question. He merely touched the tip of her nose gently. As Pei Yucheng walked to the study, Lin Yan instinctively asked, Mr. Pei, aren't you going to my room? However, Lin Yan felt that something was amiss the moment she said that. No, she didn't say those words. She must have been possessed by that pervert just now. That pervert was the one who said those words. Pei Yucheng didn't turn his head as the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Sleep early. Of course, if you insist. Lin Yan hurriedly said. Mr. Pei, you should rest early too. After returning to her room, Lin Yan fell into deep thought as she lay on the bed. What the hell was the Hunters Guild doing? Why would they cause trouble for her? Soon Lin Yan recalled something. Not long ago, she had met a similar group of people at the beach near the He family's old house. They seemed to be from some guild. Lin Yan recalled how she had taught those people a lesson. So, could it be that the guild held a grudge and had been preparing for a long time to purposely take revenge on her? This possibility was not very high, but it did not mean that it was impossible. It was a pity that it was already late at night. Otherwise, he could look for Ling Yu and ask her about the situation. With Ling Yu's ability, it shouldn't be difficult for her to investigate. He could only ask Ling Yu about the situation tomorrow. Lin Yan realized that ever since she had returned to the country, there had been more and more mysteries surrounding her. Many people mistook her for someone else. First, it was Ling Yu. Then, it was the man who treated the parrot as a pet and said that he owed him $10 billion. Finally, it was the so-called Hunters Guild. Not only that, but there was also an existence that could possess her body and control it. Ring after ring, buckle after buckle. But she didn't even know what happened to the laboratory or the whereabouts of her younger brother. Lin Yan had wanted to wake up early the next day to watch the race. However, she realized that Pei Yucheng's book hadn't been taken away. Lin Yan's curiosity was piqued as she picked up the heavy ancient book. Chapter 823. When Lin Yan flipped open the first page of the book, she was slightly shocked. This book was filled with handwriting, and the contents were all manually recorded. Besides, Lin Yan realized that these handwriting didn't come from the same person. The entire book was made up of at least a dozen different handwriting. This thing, could it be a family heirloom? Lin Yan stared at the book on her phone, deep in thought. A book had been through at least a dozen people's hands. The handwriting at the beginning seemed to have become a little blurry due to time. On the contrary, the handwriting was clearer. Of course, Lin Yan wasn't very interested in the origin of this book. She was just curious about the contents. Lin Yan didn't sleep for the entire night. She had only read about 1/10 of the book. The evolution recorded in the book wasn't as difficult to accept as Lin Yan had imagined. However, it seemed a little difficult, and she couldn't understand much of the relevant information. Lin Yan had gradually accepted the fact that humans could evolve. Evolution wasn't limited to theory. In this world, there might already be many human evolvers. Besides, the book also mentioned the Hunters Guild. The Hunters Guild had been established for a long time, and its main purpose was to capture humans who had evolved through extraordinary means. Human evolution, as Pei-Yuqing had said, was divided into two types. The first type was pure evolved humans. They were born evolved humans and didn't need external help to become evolved humans. The other type was evolved humans who had evolved through extraordinary means, such as modifying the brain or genes. There were also ranks among evolved humans. Born evolved humans were the most respected, while humans who had evolved through extraordinary means were the lowest. The purpose of the Hunters Guild was to capture those low-class evolved humans. According to the book, about 23 years ago, there was an extremely famous magician in a certain country who created an amazing magic trick. Without any auxiliary tools, in front of tens of thousands of people, he was able to fly nearly a kilometer in the air without falling for an hour. Not long after, the magician had been captured by the Hunters Guild. This was just one of thousands of cases. The so-called title of the magician was just a cover. In essence, he was a genuine evolved human. The reason he could hover in the air without falling wasn't because he had used any magic tricks. It was because of some kind of ability that had been bestowed upon him after evolution. As for what kind of ability it was, the book didn't record it in detail. Lin Yan guessed that it might have evolved in terms of matter or gravity. Early in the morning, Lin Yan rubbed her eyes and set the book aside. The book briefly introduced many evolvers, and some of them were even big shots that were known to every household. Among them were some great magicians from the last century. She had only read 1/10 of the content, but it was already an eye-opener for her. She was amazed by the wisdom of the ancients. The concept of evolvers did not start in modern times. Its origins could even be traced back to ancient times. Now Lin Yan was doubting herself. If human evolution existed, then what was she? An evolver, or just an ordinary person? Lin Yan couldn't forget the darkness in that laboratory. From the moment she and her brother were brought into the laboratory, her heart was filled with endless fear and darkness. In fact, she often woke up from her dreams because she remembered some details of the laboratory. Chapter 824. Lin Yan still remembered that she had fainted in the laboratory. When she woke up, she had been fixed to a cold metal bed. There were all sorts of instruments around her that she didn't recognize. The colors on the instruments kept changing, and they kept beeping. Lin Yan had always been puzzled about the purpose of the laboratory and what it was researching. However, now Lin Yan gradually had some ideas. Was it possible that it was used to turn ordinary people into postnatal evolved beings, just like what was recorded in the books? After she escaped from the laboratory, Lin Yan's body had indeed undergone unprecedented changes. First of all, she had a strong learning ability. She could even remember everything she saw with a glance. Not only that, but she had also become extremely strong. Lin Yan guessed that she might be a low-level evolved human who had been assisted in the books. If that was the case, it would explain why the Hunters Guild had repeatedly come to find trouble with her. According to the books, the Hunters Guild was very powerful and had many congenital evolved beings. However, Lin Yan had met the Hunters Guild 3 times. The people sent by the Hunters Guild didn't seem as powerful as the books had described. Was it because the Hunters Guild had declined a long time ago? Or was it because her evolution level was too low that the Hunters Guild didn't take her seriously at all? That was why they had sent the most ordinary people to capture her. Lin Yan had no idea. Lin Yan lay on the bed and closed her eyes in deep thought. After a long time, Lin Yan suddenly opened her eyes. Something that had been bothering her for a long time surfaced in her mind. Could it be that the female pervert who possessed her was also a human evolved human? All this while, Lin Yan had thought that she had a mental problem or had encountered a ghost. If a human evolved being had the ability to possess others, that would be too heaven-defying. This ability could completely control the life and death of others. If the possessor had the intention to possess the body of an enemy and take a knife to his own neck like cutting a piece of pork, the possessor would cut off his own neck. Lin Yan's scalp tingled at the thought of this. This was almost an invincible perverted ability. However, after some thought, Ling Yan felt that something was amiss. She had never offended such a terrifying woman. Logically speaking, she shouldn't have possessed her. After some thought, Ling Yan was enlightened. If a female evolved being had possessed him, she would have been drooling over Pei Yuqing's looks. She would have been the female's tool. He hadn't possessed her because he had a grudge against her, but because he wanted to use her to get close to Pei Yuqing. Ling Yan frowned. She had slept with someone else's girlfriend in hopes of becoming her boyfriend. What a shameless pervert. The next time that lecher possessed her, she would have to have a good talk with her. The pervert's idea was too stupid. If she wanted to get close to Pei Yuqing, why did she have to possess her body? She could do whatever she wanted and get close to Pei Yuqing. She could even get intimate with him. Suddenly, Ling Yan's mind was filled with images of tigers and wolves. Ling Yan shuddered. She hadn't used her cleverness in the right place. No, she couldn't let that lecher find out about this. Otherwise, Pei Yuqing's reputation would be ruined. Ling Yan could even imagine how the lecher would look at Pei Yuqing if she were to be seen by Pei Yutong or Pei Nanxiu. End of this chapter. Chapter 825. However, to be honest, the ability to possess someone at will was really an evolved ability that made people envious. Ling Yan suddenly envied this ability. If she had such an ability, she would be able to possess someone else's body and put the money in their pockets into her own wallet. She wouldn't be able to reject it even if she wanted to. Or perhaps she could possess the boss and increase her salary by 10 times. No, 100 times. Most importantly, she would have to sign the contract. Ling Yan blushed at the thought of this. This wasn't what she was thinking. She couldn't be so shameless and immoral. Money was something that she wouldn't bring with her in life or death. It was like a fleeting cloud to her. This was who she was. She wasn't interested in money. After all, life was about living for herself and the people she loved, not for money. Right? Just as Ling Yan was lost in her thoughts, her phone rang. It was He Lufeng. Ling Yan replied, "Speak." He Lufeng replied, "Sister, you're too cold to me. I'm sad. Can you not say one word at a time? You can even say 2 words." Ling Yan replied, "Speak." He Lufeng was speechless. Although he didn't know why, he wanted to kill himself. "Sister, we've found a venue. There are a few of them. Let's gather and see the venue," He Lufeng said. Ling Yan nodded in agreement. She had to admit that He Lufeng was indeed swift and decisive. This was completely different from his character. He had completed the task that he had given him yesterday. At the very least, there had been some highlights in his life. "What's the lowest price?" Ling Yan asked hastily. "Oh, not much," He Lufeng replied. Ling Yan asked, "1 year?" He Lufeng replied, 1 month. Ling Yan replied, "Gun." "Sister, I'm not the boss. It's useless even if you tell me. Come out and gather. Let's talk. Money can't be brought along in life or death." "Money isn't that important," He Lufeng said hurriedly. Ling Yan fell into deep thought. "Then, why don't you pay?" He Lufeng was speechless. "Sister, I've thought about it carefully. The price is indeed shameless. Let's talk. If there's nothing to talk about, we'll go to another place." He Lufeng wiped the cold sweat off his face. What kind of joke was this? He could eat *T, but he really couldn't pay. To He Lufeng, racing was his life, and he had joined it to earn money. She hung up and washed up. Then, she drove to the place where she had agreed to meet He Lufeng. He Lufeng and Mo Shuyan had been waiting for a long time outside a club. "Sister, this venue isn't bad, right?" He Lufeng grinned at Ling Yan. Ling Yan scrutinized him for a moment. It had been a racing club, so the venue had been decent. However, Ling Yan couldn't accept the price. Half a year's rent was equivalent to half of her life, and a year's rent was equivalent to her life. The contract was for 3 years. Sorry, but her life wasn't enough. The owner was a young man. They had spent more than an hour trying to persuade him, but he wouldn't give them a single cent. She had no choice but to give up on this venue and move on to the next one. Early in the morning, Ling Yan, He Lufeng, and Mo Shuyan searched for a venue. However, the price was too high, or the price was acceptable. End of chapter. Chapter 826. Lin Yan felt a little helpless. It was too difficult to be a boss. Was she going to die before she could even start her career? F***ck. Yilifeng bellowed. These people are really shameless. How can the market price be that high? All of them value money so much. I despise those misers the most. Lin Yan's unfriendly gaze landed on Yilifeng as soon as he finished speaking. Yilifeng replied, "Except for me and my sister." Lin Yan gave Yilifeng a thumbs up. "Brother, you're really internationally famous," Yilifeng asked. "International famous trademark?" Lin Yan replied, "Double standard." Yilifeng was speechless. As the saying goes, money drives a hero to his death. It's a pity that all my money is with the He family team. Otherwise, I would have rented one of the floors of that building. Mo Shuyan lamented. Lin Yan's eyes lit up when she heard Mo Shuyan. That building? Captain, you must be joking. Even if I sold you, it wouldn't be enough. I remember a fool who set up a virtual reality game company and bought the entire building. In the end, there were no customers. Ha ha ha. Yilifeng chuckled. What are you laughing at? Mo Shuyan glanced at Yilifeng. He can buy an entire building. Yilifeng replied. He doesn't have any customers. Mo Shuyan replied. He can buy a building. Yilifeng was speechless. Mo Shuyan asked. So what are you laughing at? Yilifeng replied. Mo Shuyan replied. You fool. Yilifeng replied. I suddenly feel a little sad. Let's go. Lin Yan perked up instantly. Sister, where are we going? Asked Yilifeng. I'm taking you to find that fool. Lin Yan didn't even turn her head. Lin Yan, Yilifeng, and the others arrived in front of a building. Virtual reality game company. F***ck. Yilifeng glanced at Lin Yan in shock. Sister, are you serious? You want to rent a floor of this building? Lin Yan nodded. Why can't I? Yilifeng quipped. Sister, it's not that I look down on you, but you can't afford to rent those venues. If you can, I'll crawl on the ground like a maggot. Mo Shuyan glanced at Yilifeng. I will bark like a dog to accompany you. Lin Yan had no time to waste on them. She sent her boss a text. Boss, are you there? A moment later, there was a reply. Boss, is it payday? Lin Yan was speechless. Lin Yan replied. Boss, I'm not here for my salary. I have something to discuss with you. Are you at the office? I'm here. Boss, yes. Didn't he say he was going overseas for a business trip? Why is he back so soon? Lin Yan led Yilifeng and Mo Shuyan to the building. Such a huge place, yet it's closed all the time. It's not even open for business. Yilifeng stood in front of the building and looked at the tightly shut door. He sighed. He couldn't understand the thoughts of rich people. Let's go. The building isn't open. We need a password to enter, added Yilifeng. Lin Yan keyed in the password and opened the door. Lin Yan glanced at Yilifeng, who was in a daze. She stepped into the building and said, Let's go. Mo Shuyan replied, Fool, why aren't you coming in? Didn't you hear your sister's call? Your sister works in this building, so it's normal for her to know the password. End of this chapter. Chapter 827. Yilifeng glanced at Lin Yan in astonishment. He had never imagined that his cousin would be that fool's employee. Oh my God! Are you kidding me? My sister is an actress. That fool is so rich. How could he hire an actress as his employee? Yilifeng exclaimed. Yilifeng walked over to Lin Yan and asked, Sister, what are you doing here? What's your job? I'm translating. Lin Yan replied honestly. Translating? Yilifeng studied Lin Yan suspiciously. Lin Yan had been in the country for so many years, so she knew a few foreign languages. However, she couldn't speak them properly, so it was a problem if she could understand them. Can't I? Lin Yan asked Yilifeng. Translating. Yilifeng stroked his chin in confusion. Damn it. Lin Yan rolled her eyes at Yilifeng. Goddess, let's ignore this fool. Let's get down to business. Even if it's your boss's building, the rent shouldn't be cheap. Mo Shuyan glanced at Lin Yan. Lin Yan fell into deep thought. Lin Yan didn't know if it would be cheap, but at least her boss was generous. She should be able to negotiate. For example, she could pay in installments, or give him a discount. Most importantly, she had been loyal to the company and had made great contributions to the translation work. As the saying went, even if she didn't make any contributions, she had put in a lot of effort. Lin Yin led Mo Shuyan, and he luffing to the man's office. "Hello, boss." Lin Yin beamed when she saw the man. These two. The man's eyes trailed to Mo Shuyan and he luffing. "Boss, this is my brother, he luffing. And this is my friend Mo Shuyan," Lin Yin explained. The man fell silent for a moment before he nodded. "Hello, boss. My name is He Lufeng. Please speak." He Lufeng leaned forward and smiled. The man studied He Lufeng curiously before he turned to Lin Yin. "Why are you looking for me so urgently? Did you encounter any difficulties?" Lin Yin was speechless. Why did he only look for him when he was in trouble? "Boss, I have a business deal to discuss with you." Lin Yin grinned at him. Mo Shuyan silently sized up the man in front of him. The man's every movement was unlike that of an ordinary nouveau riche. He had a powerful aura, and if Mo Shuyan were to talk to him, he would feel pressured. Mo Shuyan was curious as to how Lin Yin had gotten to know this man, and even become his employee. "Boss, look. Most of this building is empty. My friend and I are thinking of starting a team. We need an office and a training space." Lin Yin chuckled softly as she studied the man. The man took a sip of water and asked. And then, Lin Yin got straight to the point. "Boss, I would like to rent a floor of your building." Hearing this, the man said thoughtfully. "Oh." Lin Yin was speechless. "What does this, oh, mean? It doesn't seem to be very interested." "Boss, since you're so business-minded, why don't you invest in our team? We can use the venue as part of the investment. I guarantee that you won't regret it. You'll get back 10 times the investment." Lin Yin grinned. He Lufeng and Mo Shuyan stared at Lin Yin in astonishment. Chapter 828. This. How could they be talking about renting an office space? This was a scam. How could Lin Yin not spend a single cent on such a luxurious venue? Did she really think that this man was an idiot? How could she afford such a building? Did she lack money? Did she look like an idiot? She even wanted to invest. Did she think that this man was an idiot? Sure. The man replied without hesitation. He Lufeng was speechless. Mo Shuyan was speechless. Wait a minute. Is this man really an idiot? Or am I dreaming? He Lufeng pulled Mo Shuyan aside and whispered. "Captain, slap me and see if I'm dreaming." Slap. Mo Shuyan slapped He Lufeng. "Are you dreaming?" asked Mo Shuyan curiously. He Lufeng covered his face and stared at Mo Shuyan in shock. "Captain, are you serious?" Mo Shuyan glanced at He Lufeng expressionlessly. "Anyone who knows me knows that I love to help others," He Lufeng replied. "It hurts a little." Mo Shuyan nodded. "That's great. Then it's not a dream." The corners of He Lufeng's mouth twitched. For some reason, he felt an urge to slap Mo Shuyan. However, as he studied Mo Shuyan's physique, He Lufeng pondered for a moment before he smiled at him. "Captain, be gentler next time." Lin Yin stared at the man in astonishment. Lin Yin hadn't expected that her boss would agree so readily. He hadn't hesitated at all. His answer disrupted Lin Yan's train of thought and disrupted her plan. She had already thought of countless ways to convince her boss, but now, she was completely useless. "However, I have a condition." The man glanced at Lin Yin. "A condition?" Lin Yin couldn't help but sneer coldly. "Even 100 conditions wouldn't be a problem. I'm very good at racing. You know that," said the man. Yeah, I know. Boss, some professional racers can't compare to your racing skills." Lin Yin nodded repeatedly. As long as he gave her a free sponsorship, he would be willing to let Yeva lose to him on the track, much less praise his racing skills. "Yes." The man nodded slightly and continued. "My condition is to let me join your new racing team. And I want to be in the center position. I will be number 1 in every race." The smile on Lin Yan's face froze at the man's words. "Mo Shuyan Xiaofeng. Let's go." Lin Yan rose from her seat. If he were to be the number 1, would there still be a need for his racing team to exist? This man's driving skills could only be described as catastrophic. He could even crash into a stationary object. If he really agreed to his conditions, he might run over a few more racers. Or he might even run over the spectators and kill them. If that happened, he wouldn't be able to survive. No, absolutely not. Even if he tried to convince the heavens, it wouldn't do. Boss, aren't you making games? Games have a bright future. Mo Shuyan understood Lin Yan's intentions instantly. Given Lin Yan's personality, the fact that she had rejected him so decisively meant that the man's driving skills had to have impressed her. Hence, Lin Yan had turned around without hesitation. I prefer driving, the man said. What kind of car do you drive? Asked He Lufeng instinctively. The man glanced at He Lufeng silently. Chapter 829. Boss, why don't you invest more money and become one of the bosses of our team? You will be able to manage a large number of racers. That would be great. Mo Shuyan gazed at the man and tried to persuade him. Didn't I make myself clear enough? The man glanced at Mo Shuyan. Although the man did not move, Mo Shuyan broke out in a cold sweat when he looked at him. Mo Shuyan shut his mouth hastily, not daring to say another word. Boss, I'm sorry. I'm trying to think of another way. I don't want the venue anymore. Lin Yan said helplessly. Really? The man asked. Yes. Lin Yan replied firmly. She turned around and left with Mo Shuyan and He Lufeng, who were both dumbfounded and bewildered. There is a huge venue behind the building. It's about the size of 15 racing clubs. It belongs to me too. You can use it for training, the man said softly. Lin Yan, who was about to step out of the office, froze in shock. Lin Yan retracted her foot. Boss, welcome to the Aurora team. Lin Yan smiled brightly as she shook the man's hand. Yeah, the man replied. Boss, do you want to sponsor a dozen cars? Lin Yan grinned. No, the man replied expressionlessly. Lin Yan was speechless. How heartless. Then, boss, can you show us the venue? Which floor of the building can we use? Mo Shuyan hurried forward. Mo Shuyan felt as though he was dreaming. This man was too easy to talk to. He was so rich and had such a terrifying aura. How could he be a fool? Could he be interested in his goddess? In the blink of an eye, Mo Shuyan found his thoughts laughable. This man had seen everything. He shouldn't be seduced by beauty. Why had this man agreed to Lin Yan's ridiculous request? Why had he even offered to give her a bigger training ground? Did he really think that the team would bring him huge benefits? I reckon that this fool really likes racing. He might even be obsessed with it. He Lufeng whispered to Mo Shuyan. Do I look like a fool? You seem to like calling me that. The man glanced at He Lufeng. He Lufeng was startled. What kind of hearing did this man have? He was 8 feet away from Mo Shuyan, and he was whispering to him. How could Mo Shuyan hear him? Even a cat's ears couldn't be that sensitive. No. He Lufeng hurriedly shook his head. Boss, I didn't say that you're a fool. I said. He Lufeng instinctively glanced at Lin Yan and Mo Shuyan. After some hesitation, he pointed at Mo Shuyan. Boss, I'm talking about him. He's a fool. Boss, I'm sorry. Please don't take it to heart. My brother's brain hasn't developed well, so this part. Lin Yan pointed awkwardly at her head. Let's go check out the venue. The man didn't say much and got up. Little thief, just you wait. Mo Shuyan sneered coldly. He Lufeng was speechless. The man led Lin Yan and the others to the entrance of the building. Mo Shuyan and He Lufeng were excited when they saw the huge venue. Chapter 830. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they had the most luxurious venue in the country. Who would believe that a newly established team could have such an office and such a training ground? Other than my floor, you can use the rest of the building, replied the man. Thank you, boss. Lin Yan was grateful. She had been hit by this man for nothing. Boss, you really have good taste. Our team won't disappoint you. Mo Shuyan hurried forward to flatter him. Oh yeah. The man turned to Mo Shuyan and asked, Are all of you professional racers? Yes. He Lufeng nodded. How about this? Let's compete here and see who is better, said the man. Lin Yan suddenly felt nervous. How could he outrun anyone with his racing skills? Even He Lufeng could outrun him. Why did he have to embarrass himself? However, this man had a flaw in his character. She couldn't say that he wasn't good at racing, nor could she outrun him. Otherwise, the consequences would be dire. Sure, we can test your skills, boss. Emoshian grinned. Lin Yan was speechless. Don't court death. It's not convenient. We don't have a car yet. Let's wait for another chance, replied Lin Yan hastily. Yeah, we don't have a car yet, replied He Lifeng. It's okay, replied the man. I have one. The man glanced at a row in the distance. Choose one yourself. F***CK. He Lifeng followed the man's line of sight and saw a row of cars. What kind of cars were they? Any one of them would be able to buy half of a fleet of cars. Although He Lifeng was a professional racer, he had never raced a car of such a level. Even Mo Xian's eyes turned red. Every single one of these cars was his dream. Boss, your car is amazing, Mo Xian exclaimed excitedly. Lin Yan frowned. Is that all you've got? Lin Yan glanced at the man. Boss, do you want these cars to be the team's property? I'll let you. He Lifeng was speechless. Mo Xian was speechless. Was that all he had got? However, the man didn't seem interested in the team's boss, so he ignored Lin Yan. Take your pick. The man led them to a row of racing cars. Lin Yan swallowed hard as she stared at the car. She had never seen such a treasure when she was in the WZ team. Lin Yan looked regretful. Such a good car was actually owned by a man with such disastrous driving skills. It was the most appropriate way to describe it. This boss, I'll drive this one. Big brother, I want this one. I love this one. Useless things. Lin Yan gnashed her teeth as she glared at Mo Xian and He Lifeng. I want this one. Lin Yan pointed at the car and grinned. Soon, the man stepped forward and opened the doors of the three cars. He Lifeng sat in the driver's seat and couldn't help but feel a sense of superiority. In this life, he had actually been able to drive the car of his dreams. At the very least, at this moment, he should not lose to the racers of the major professional teams. The race car belongs to whoever can outrun me, the man said. Lin Yan, who had initially been disinterested, peeked her head out of the window. Are you serious? My word is as good as gold, the man replied expressionlessly. Chapter 831. Lin Yan glanced at the cars and yelled at Mo Xian and He Lifeng. No one is allowed to show mercy. Although this boss's character was weird, he had to take risks. Can we start now? Mo Xian looked at the man in the car in front of him and said excitedly. I said we can start. The man was expressionless. Sure, you're the boss. You have the final say. Mo Xian nodded eagerly. Whoosh. Suddenly, the man's car sped away, leaving Lin Yan, Mo Xian, and the others behind in a daze. Had he said that they had started? No way. Go back on your word. Lin Yan was flabbergasted. How could such a big boss play dirty and shameless? He had clearly said that they could only start the car now, yet he had sped off first. Start. Lin Yan and the others were at a loss when the man's voice rang through the walkie-talkie in the car. F***CK. Who can outrun him? He's too shameless. He Lifeng started the car hastily and sped away. Lin Yan and Mo Xian followed closely behind him. Even if you're shameless, you can't outrun us. The corners of Lin Yan's mouth curled into a smile. Lin Yan had already experienced the man's driving skills. Even He Lifeng could beat him up 1,000 times. He Lifeng's car had already caught up with the man's car. That's all. He Lifeng was in disbelief when he saw that the man was about to overtake him. He had thought that the man was an expert, but he couldn't outrun him. How could he be considered an expert? Or had his driving skills reached perfection? Ha ha ha. Boss, I'm sorry. I admit that I'm too good. He Lifeng was all smiles as he sat in the driver's seat and stepped on the accelerator. He was indeed a fool. Wasn't this car a free gift? He Lifeng's car had just overtaken the man, but he could see that the man was chasing after him relentlessly. He seemed to have never let go of the accelerator as he drove toward his car. F***CK. He Lifeng glanced at the rearview mirror and broke out in a cold sweat. Was this a competition or a murder? Was the boss planning to run him over with the car? Even if he didn't die from the crash, the car would definitely be wrecked. Instinctively, He Lufeng steered the car to the right. Entering the path of self-help was equivalent to forfeiting. However, it was too late when He Lufeng came back to his senses. F***ck. He Lufeng's eyes reddened. What kind of method is this? Why does she look so much like my sister? He Lufeng gritted his teeth. He recalled that when Lin Yan had been his navigator for the first time, she had done the same thing. She had crashed into someone else's car. You and my sister are from the same sect, right? You're so shameless. He Lufeng got out of the car angrily, feeling indignant. It would have been fine if he had lost due to his inferior skills. However, his racing skills were clearly miles ahead of that man's, yet he still lost. He couldn't accept it at all. You idiot. Soon, Mo Xian's car passed by, and he gave He Lufeng the finger. He Lufeng was speechless. Idiot. A second later, Lin Yan's car stopped and rolled down the window. She glanced at He Lufeng in disappointment. You can't even outrun him? End of this chapter. Chapter 832. Sister, listen to me. It's not what you think. He's shameless. He Lufeng wanted to cry, but no tears came out. However, Lin Yan didn't seem to listen to He Lufeng's explanation. She rolled up the window and disappeared in an instant. She hadn't misjudged He Lufeng. He was the most useless person. Mo Xian furrowed his brows as he looked at his boss's racing car. Why was he driving so unsteadily? Did he even know how to drive? Wasn't he afraid that the wheel would hit the road and overturn his car? Dangerous driving. This was definitely dangerous driving. Mo Xian, who was following the man's car, couldn't help but tremble in fear. He was afraid that the man would step on the brakes for no reason. Mo Xian stepped on the accelerator and flashed twice. He was really afraid that his boss wouldn't look in the rearview mirror. Mo Xian no longer treated the man as a racer. Instead, he treated him as a rookie driver. Driving a private car on the road would be difficult. Hey, you want to stop my car? Mo Xian shook his head and sneered coldly. I asked you to drive this car. How dare you stop a professional racer like me? Dream on. The man seemed to have spotted Mo Xian's car in the rearview mirror. He swayed left and right in an attempt to stop Mo Xian. However, Mo Xian didn't take the man seriously at all. He casually turned the steering wheel and overtook the man's car. Baby, you're mine now. The corners of Mo Xian's mouth curled up. His dream car had come so easily. Huh? Mo Xian instinctively glanced at the rearview mirror, and his expression changed. The car that the man was driving was extremely fast, and it directly crashed into him. F***ck. Is this necessary? Mo Xian was startled, but he didn't give up like He Lufeng. Instead, he stepped on the accelerator and tried to shake the man off. However, Mo Xian realized that he had been a little too naive. Don't tell me he has two engines in his car. The corners of He Lufeng's mouth twitched. The man's car was too terrifying. If he pushed harder, it would be able to fly like a plane. The most important thing was that the track was basically a straight line. There was no skill to speak of. It was a competition of whose car's performance was better. Men didn't need to do anything. They could just step on the accelerator to win. About 10 seconds later, the man's car was only about a meter away from Mo Xian. The two cars could collide at any time. You're cheating. Mo Xian gritted his teeth and ran out of the track. In terms of speed, his racing car could not compare to the man's racing car. In addition, the track was a straight line. If this continued, the car behind him would crash into his car within 2 seconds. That man was probably a lunatic. Was this a race? He was risking his life on the racetrack. If this kind of person was a racer, he would definitely be banned forever. Swoosh. As soon as they left the track, Lin Yan's car flashed past them. Lin Yan glanced at Mo Xian, who was cursing and swearing by the side of the road. Mo Xian lost. Lin Yan frowned. What was going on? Lin Yan knew that man's racing skills better than anyone else. It was one thing for him to beat He Lufeng. After all, He Lufeng was a bomb on the track. He was terrible and unstable. However, Mo Xian was a professional racer who had a certain reputation in the racing industry. How could he lose to that man? Chapter 833. Soon Lin Yan stopped thinking about anything else. She didn't care if they won or lost, as long as she won. She had to admit that the man's racing skills were incredible. If he hadn't swayed left and right, Lin Yan might not have been able to overtake him. How could Mo Shuyan and He Lufeng lose? Lin Yan couldn't figure it out. Lin Yan overtook the man's car without hesitation. Before long, Lin Yan realized that the man's old habit was acting up again. He crashed into her car. Realization dawned on Lin Yan. No wonder Mo Shuyan had driven his car off the track. If he hadn't driven his car off the track, she would have been killed by him. He's going all out. Lin Yan grinned as she studied the rearview mirror. Although it was a straight line, the track was wide enough. Every time the man was about to hit Lin Yan would swerve to avoid him easily. F***ck. How could she do that? He Lufeng, who was standing outside the track, watched Lin Yan's performance in astonishment. She had dared to swerve at such a high speed. The most amazing thing was that Lin Yan's car was stable. There was no sign of it flipping over. Mo Shuyan was in disbelief. What was going on? 15 seconds later, Lin Yan's car reached the finish line. Bang! Lin Yan had just reached the finish line when the man's car crashed into a trash can, sending it flying dozens of meters away. Lin Yan's heart skipped a beat. How could he be on the track? Initially, Lin Yan had thought that this was the man's strategy. Every time someone overtook him, he would crash into them and force them to leave the track. Alas, Lin Yan realized that she had been wrong. That man didn't have any strategy. He was just too lousy. He couldn't control the car's performance and speed. Lin Yan ran out of the car and hid far away. She was really afraid that the man would lose control of his car and kill her. A few seconds later, the man finally stepped on the brakes. The car skidded and spun a few times on the track before coming to a stop. Is he doing acrobatics? Mo Shuyan rushed forward. Boss, are you alright? Lin Yan hurried forward and knocked on the window with a frown. The man opened the car door and stared at her expressionlessly. Consider yourself lucky. Lin Yan was speechless. It was already like this, and he was still bragging. He almost lost his life. If it wasn't for my shoelace accidentally getting tangled on the accelerator, the man said coldly. Mo Shuyan and He Lufeng looked at each other in dismay. It was wrapped around the accelerator. Was this how they lost? I lost to shoelaces? He Lufeng was dumbfounded. Mo Shuyan's expression didn't look too good either. Did that mean that he had also lost to shoelaces? She had originally thought that the man was the oil bucket type who had a fiery temper on the track and would explode at the slightest provocation. He would crash into anyone who overtook him. In the end, his shoelaces were wrapped around the accelerator. This was a huge stain on Mo Shuyan's career. He had never thought that he had overestimated this man. If he had known this would happen, he would have had many ways to deal with it. As long as the man didn't insist on hitting him, he would definitely win. Boss, are you alright? Lin Yan glanced at the expressionless man. It's fine, the man said. Chapter 834. Lin Yan was speechless. It was good that he was fine. Boss, you're too good. Mo Shuyan rolled his eyes. Look, you made a huge mistake. Your shoelace was wrapped around the accelerator, but you still managed to beat me, and He Lufeng easily. Boss, you're really good at racing. The man's expression softened when he heard Mo Shuyan. He couldn't help but steal a few glances at Mo Shuyan. Lin Yan glared at Mo Shuyan. How could this bootlicker steal her lines? She was the one who had thought of it first. She had been about to say it, but Mo Shuyan had beaten her to it. How could this man be so shameless? Boss, you're really good. I used all my strength to barely beat you. I didn't expect you to accidentally wrap your shoelace around the accelerator. Otherwise, I wouldn't have one. Lin Yan gave the man a thumbs up. Let's do it again, the man said gently. Mo Shuyan, Lin Yan, and everyone else's expressions changed drastically. No. There's no need for that. Big brother, don't be rash. You've won us over. Lin Yin and Mo Shuyan yelled at the same time. Racing with this man wasn't a competition. It was a gamble. Who would dare to race with a man who could wrap his shoelace around the accelerator? They had no feud with each other. So why would they want to perish together? Boss, there's really no need for that. We've seen your ability. Lin Yin grinned at him. The man fell silent for some time before he nodded. Lin Yin heaved a sigh of relief when the man agreed. Lin Yin wasn't afraid that the man would kill her on the track, as he didn't have the ability to do so. She was afraid that the man would kill himself. Where else could she find such a good boss? Boss, look, this car. Lin Yin glanced at the car beside her. It's yours, the man said softly. Mo Shuyan replied, I hate it. He Lifeng replied, I'm furious. Again, the man turned to look at the two of them. He Lifeng was speechless. Mo Shuyan. Boss, they wouldn't be able to beat you even if they tried 100 times. They aren't on the same level. The difference is too great. They aren't qualified to compete with you on the track. Lin Yin grinned. The man seemed to enjoy Lin Yan's words. His tone and expression softened. Lin Yin frowned at the two of them. Come with me. Don't disturb boss. He is very busy. Yes. Oh. The two of them said weakly. It didn't feel good to miss the dream car. Lin Yin and the rest of them chose an office and spent the entire morning setting up a few computers and office supplies. It looked pretty good. In her office, Lin Yin was about to talk to Qi Xiaoyuan about the paperwork when He Lifeng barged in frantically. Sister, this is bad. This is bad. He Lifeng was flustered. You were bitten by a dog. Lin Yin glanced at He Lifeng. No. Someone is here to cause trouble. He Lifeng blurted out anxiously. Who are you looking for trouble with? Lin Yin was confused. They are looking for you. He Lifeng replied. Huh? Lin Yin was startled. Looking for trouble with her? They said that they were from a guild, and that they were looking for someone called Lin Yin. I saw that they were aggressive, so I ran away. He Lifeng explained. Chapter 835. The Hunters Guild? Lin Yin frowned. Yeah, that's right. The Hunters Guild is a bunch of lunatics. He Lifeng nodded. Lin Yin was surprised. The Hunters Guild was so powerful. How had they known that she was here? How many of them are there? Lin Yin frowned. I didn't count carefully, but I think there are more than 20 of them. They are all tall and strong, replied He Lifeng. How many of us are there? Asked Lin Yin. We. He Lifeng glanced at Lin Yin before he glanced at Mo Shuyan, who was sleeping soundly on the couch. After some thought, he said 3. 3 of us. Lin Yin nodded and said solemnly. Then why aren't you calling the police? He Lifeng was speechless. He Lifeng whipped out his phone when a dozen people rushed in. Who is Lin Yin? One of the young men asked coldly. Lin Yin scanned her surroundings. Who is Lin Yin? He Lifeng shook his head. I don't know. He Lifeng's gaze landed on Mo Shuyan. He is Lin Yin. The man was puzzled. Isn't Lin Yin a girl? He Lifeng nodded repeatedly. Yeah, she just changed. Lin Yin was speechless. The man glanced at He Lifeng. Are you kidding me? Big brother, I'm telling the truth. If I lie to you, I will crawl on the ground like a maggot. He Lifeng blurted out anxiously. Although He Lifeng didn't know who Lin Yin had offended, they didn't look like good people. It would be terrible if they took her away. Who is she? The man glanced at Lin Yin, who was standing behind He Lifeng. Oh, she's the boss here. He Lifeng explained. Isn't she Lin Yin? The man frowned. No, she's the boss here. We don't know Lin Yin at all. Did you find the wrong person? He Lifeng quipped. Ha! The man took out a photo and threw it at He Lifeng's face. Look. Don't they look alike? He Lifeng picked up the photo and studied it carefully. Then he told Lin Yin solemnly. Sister, your long-lost sister has finally been found. Lin Yin was speechless. What a fool. Miss Lin, why don't you come with us? What do you think? The man grinned at Lin Yin. Lin Yin sneered coldly. Do you know who my boss is? How dare you threaten me? That's right. Do you know who our boss is? He Lifeng's body trembled as she shouted coldly. Oh, who is your boss? I'd like to meet him. The leader of the group smiled. Sister, Who is our boss? He Lifeng whispered to Lin Yan. Lin Yan glanced at He Lifeng. She was deliberately trying to scare them. This group of people from the Hunters Guild was completely different from the previous ones. Their auras were extremely strong, and Xiaochen might not be a match for them. Moreover, the Hunters Guild had underestimated her previously. It was impossible for them to make the same mistake multiple times. I know it's the man from that night, right? Fine, call him out, the leader said. Naturally, Ling Yin knew that she was referring to Pei Yuqing. However, Pei Yuqing wasn't by his side. I'll change my shoes. Let's continue. Suddenly, a man in sportswear pushed the door open. Are you busy? The man glanced at Lin Yan and the members of the Hunters Guild. Boss, no. He Lifeng hurriedly shot the man a look. You're their boss. The leader stared at the man in sportswear and sneered coldly. It's the last 2 days of the month, begging for some monthly tickets. End of the chapter. Chapter 836. He Lifeng glanced at the man and couldn't help but feel guilty. This boss didn't look like he could fight as well. Besides, a rich man like him could do business, but he shouldn't fight. Moreover, he was such a big boss. He couldn't possibly fight with others for the sake of his employees. The man's eyes trailed to the leader of the Hunters Guild as he replied coldly, I'm her boss. Hearing this, the leader nodded and sneered. All right, since that's the case, you can come with us. Before the man could speak, He Lifeng suddenly stood up and berated him. Where are we going? Little brother, this has nothing to do with you. The leader glanced at He Lifeng. He Lifeng sneered coldly. What a joke. Do you know what you're doing? You're gathering a crowd to fight and provoke trouble. I even suspect that you're planning to kidnap her. I'm a lawyer. Let me tell you, if you don't leave now, you'll be in big trouble. Oh. The leader couldn't help but chuckle. I'd like to see what kind of trouble we'll be in. He Lifeng was speechless. He had wanted to scare them, but who would have known that they were outlaws? All right, you forced me to do this. Don't blame me for not reminding you. You can't leave even if you want to. He Lifeng sneered coldly and turned to the man. Boss, call the security guards to teach these ignorant fellows a lesson. No. The man replied expressionlessly. He Lifeng was taken aback by the man's words. What had the boss just said? No security guards. Such a big boss was doing such a big business in such a huge building. Yet there wasn't even a security guard? Why do you need security guards? The boss can handle 100 of them, replied Lin Yan. He Lifeng instinctively turned to Lin Yan. Wasn't she bragging a little too much? He might have believed that the boss could handle 2 or 3 of them, but he could handle 100 of them. Was he Popeye? Had he grown up eating spinach? Or was he Superman? Of course, He Lifeng wouldn't say it aloud. He Lifeng glanced at the members of the Hunters Guild and said, I'm afraid to tell you the truth. Our boss is a ruthless man. He's known for killing tens of thousands of people on the track. If you don't leave now, he might go crazy and kill all of you. I won't be able to stop him then. You're really interesting. The leader glanced at He Lifeng with a faint smile. However, the members of the Hunters Guild didn't seem interested in He Lifeng. Instead, they turned to look at the man. The leader sneered. Boss, do you want to take her with us? Or do you want us to do it? About a quarter of an hour later, He Lifeng stared at the burly man who was wailing on the ground. Then, he glanced at the calm man and froze. His sister really wasn't bragging. Was this boss performing magic? He easily beat up more than a dozen strong men with extraordinary skills and knocked them to the ground. Do you still want me to go back with you? The man glanced at the leader of the Hunters Guild. A misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. The leader of the Hunters Guild gritted his teeth and shook his head. We found the wrong person. Didn't you say that she isn't Lin Yan? Yes, we found the wrong person. We are looking for Lin Yan, not her. Chapter 837. Lin Yan leaped forward and grinned. It's not a misunderstanding. You didn't find the wrong person. I'm Lin Yan. One of the hunters shook his head hurriedly. No. You're not. Ling Yan frowned. Who said I'm not? I am. Yes, she is. I can testify. He Lufeng chimed in. She is my employee. Go back and tell the higher-ups that they can look for me next time, the man said. May I ask who you are? The man replied expressionlessly. My surname is Xiao. Xiao. As soon as the man finished speaking, the leader's expression immediately changed. Which Xiao? Xiao of the Lantern Festival, He Lufeng replied instinctively. Shut up. Lin Yin glared at He Lufeng. Why was he everywhere? There are clouds beyond the ninth heaven, the man said softly. Ninth layer of heaven. A look of terror appeared in the leader's eyes. There were clouds beyond the ninth heaven. There were clouds beyond the ninth heaven. Do you need me to help you out? The man asked. Let's go. Let's go. The leader of the group scrambled and ran out. After they left, Lin Yin stared at the man in astonishment. Who exactly was this man? The people from the Hunters Guild were scared out of their wits when they heard his surname. Xiao, was there anything special about this surname? Boss, you're too awesome. What do you think of me? I feel like I'm a rare martial arts genius. Boss, do you need a disciple? He Lufeng gazed at the man excitedly. I don't. The man glanced at He Lufeng and turned to leave. When he reached the door, he said, Don't provoke them. Lin Yin was speechless. Who was the one provoking whom? At the Hunters Guild branch, in the hall, a huge macaw landed on the handsome man's left shoulder. Return the money. Return the money. Scumbag. 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 Return the money. Not long after, a few middle-aged men walked in. Sibai. A middle-aged man glanced at the unusually handsome man. Why? You can't even finish the task that I asked you to find? Sibai sneered. No, it's a little tricky. The people we sent out before came back and said that ninth heaven is with her. One of the middle-aged men frowned. Oh, there are clouds beyond the nine heavens. 9 heavens beyond the 9 heavens? The corners of Sibai's mouth curled up slightly. It's getting more and more interesting. That woman is indeed not simple. Even the ninth heaven has appeared. Sibai, you should know that we're just a branch. It's not realistic for us to deal with the ninth heaven. Besides, isn't it just a woman? There are all kinds of women in this world. Why do you have to snatch a woman from the ninth heaven? Then the ninth heaven. Before the middle-aged man could finish speaking, Sibai had a smile on his face as he looked at the middle-aged man with his crescent moon-like eyes. Being sized up like this, the middle-aged man did not dare to say anything else. Their Hunters Guild branch was located in the capital city. All these years, they had maintained the order of the evolved beings in the capital city. It had always been very peaceful. But who would have thought that so many great gods would appear because of a woman? It was Sibai, and now it was the Pei family. Even the ninth heaven had appeared. What was he trying to do? Was he trying to pierce through the sky? Chapter 838. Their branch couldn't handle so many big shots. But they couldn't alarm the higher-ups because of this. Do you know which one of the 3 Xiao immortals it is? Sibai asked. I'm not sure. There are 3 people in the ninth heaven. The eldest is Xiao Ji, the second is Xiao Yao, and the third is Xiao Zhe. None of them are easy to deal with. I heard from the people below that it doesn't look like the third brother Xiao Zhe. It's either Xiao Ji or Xiao Yao. Xiao Ji, Xiao Yao. I heard that these 2 brothers are like fire and water because of a woman. It doesn't look like Xiao Ji. Based on his appearance, it looks more like Xiao Yao. Regardless of whether it's Xiao Ji or Xiao Yao, I want that woman. The corners of Sibai's mouth curled into an inexplicable smile. Looking at Sibai, the middle-aged men looked at each other. Sibai was also a lunatic. He was a Khanate evolved being, and his level of evolution was extremely high. His methods were terrifying. Others might be afraid of the ninth heaven, but Sibai might not take them seriously. Shouldn't you guys send a few evolved beings to capture that woman? Sibai grinned. Sibai, you don't need our Hunters Guild at all. It won't be easy for you to capture her yourself. One of the middle-aged men was puzzled. They were just a branch, so they didn't want to offend the ninth heaven. They couldn't afford to offend Xiao Ji, or Xiao Yao unless the headquarters intervened. However, how could an ordinary postnatal evolved being alarm the headquarters? Are you doubting me? Sibai chuckled softly. I wouldn't dare. Besides being a high-level evolved being, Sibai was also related to a high-ranking member of the headquarters. How could they offend him? At the building on Middle Street, the man had already left the office. He laughing glanced at Lin Yan. Sister, our boss must be rich and powerful. Look how scared those people are just by saying his surname. Lin Yan fell into deep thought. This shouldn't have anything to do with money. Lin Yan wasn't stupid. If she was right, the boss should be an evolved being as well. Otherwise, the Hunters Guild wouldn't have such a huge reaction. Besides, Lin Yan guessed that the boss was not only an evolved being, but he should also be a natural evolved being recorded in the book. He was born an evolved being, and had a noble status. While Lin Yan was deep in thought, a message popped up on her phone. Don't provoke them, said Xiao. Lin Yan replied, Boss, I'm being passive. Xiao said, I'm talking about Sibai. Lin Yan asked, Sibai? What Sibai? I don't know Sibai. The boss did not continue to reply. Lin Yan was confused. What kind of nonsense was this? She had never heard of Sibai. Captain, how long are you going to pretend to be asleep? They've already been gone for half a day. He Lefeng glanced at Mo Shuyan, who was snoring away on the sofa. Mo Shuyan sat up with sleepy eyes. What? You're still pretending. I've seen you open your eyes a few times. Captain, aren't you being too disloyal? How could you pretend to be asleep when something is wrong? He Lefeng pursed his lips. Mo Shuyan was enraged. He Lefeng, what nonsense are you talking about? Am I that kind of person? I really fell asleep. If I hadn't fallen asleep, I would have beaten them up and made them cry for their parents. How could I pretend to be asleep? Ridiculous. How do you know that a bunch of idiots came looking for trouble? Weren't you asleep? He Lefeng glanced at Mo Shuyan. Chapter 839. Ahem. I'm hungry. I'm going to find something to eat. Mo Shuyan coughed to hide his awkwardness and swaggered out of the office. Xiaofeng, I'm going out. Lin Yan stood up. Sister, where are you going? Asked He Lefeng hastily. I'm going to look for a friend and ask him about the team, explained Lin Yan. Oh, okay. Go ahead. Be careful, sister. He Lefeng nodded. Okay. If anyone comes looking for trouble, look for Boss Xiao, Lin Yan told He Lefeng. Sister, it was fortunate that boss was here just now. If he hadn't come, I would have been able to deal with them all by myself. He Lefeng sneered coldly. Lin Yan glanced at He Lefeng and left the office without a second glance. In the car, Lin Yan called Qi Xiaoyuan and arranged a meeting place. Qi Xiaoyuan worked at the Racing Guild, so Lin Yan had something to ask him. However, halfway through the car, Lin Yan felt a little confused. When she regained consciousness, she realized that she had driven to the suburbs. Lin Yan rubbed her temples and opened the door. Why did I drive here? Lin Yan was puzzled. Ha. That's weird, right? Just as Lin Yan was puzzled, two old men appeared in front of her. The two old men looked very similar. They looked like twins, who were slovenly and unkempt. Who are you? Lin Yan frowned, feeling that there was something strange about them. Ha. We're brothers. I'm Zhang San, said one of the old men. My name is Li Si, replied the other. Lin Yan was speechless. Brothers? Your surname is Li, and his is Zhang? Lin Yan asked instinctively. I'll take my father's surname. I'll take my mother's surname. Lin Yan glanced at them. Which mental hospital had they escaped from? Do you know why you drove here? Zhang San glanced at Lin Yan. Tell me, replied Lin Yan. Let me put it this way. I use my thoughts to control your behavior. Zhang San looked proud. Evolved being? Lin Yan furrowed her eyebrows. Natural evolver. Zhang San said. An evolver born with honor. Li Si added. They're from the Hunters Guild. Lin Yan could guess who they were. Not bad. Good eyesight. Hee little girl. You're just a lowly post-celestial evolver. It's already a great honor for me, Zhang San, to come and find you. Can't UF** King leave me out? Did you come alone, Zhang San? Am I Li Si, a decoration? Li Si looked at Zhang San with dissatisfaction. Hearing this, Zhang San glanced at Li Si. I didn't beg you to come, but you insisted on coming. Besides, I'm stronger than you, so why should I introduce you? Haha, you're stronger than me. Young lady, who do you think is stronger? Li Si asked Lin Yan. Lin Yan was speechless. Did these two evolved humans overexerting themselves during their evolution and spoiling their brains from evolution? Senior, I think you're stronger. Lin Yan grinned at Li Si. Haha. Look. The eyes of the masses are sharp. Zhang San, how are you stronger than me? Chapter 840. Lin Yan had no choice but to be serious. These two old men were completely different from the ones sent by the Hunters Guild. Natural evolved beings had the ability to control other people's actions. Fortunately, there seemed to be something wrong with their brains. Perhaps she could think of a way to escape. What kind of ability is controlling other people's actions? Despicable, shameless, and despicable. Li Si looked disdainful. Zhang San, how dare you disrespect your brother? I want you to kneel down and apologize to me. Zhang San bellowed. Before Li Si could speak, Zhang San suddenly frowned. Wait, I think something's wrong. This young lady seems to be sowing discord. Li Si was startled. Now that you mention it, it does seem so. You! Zhang San flew into a rage. However, Lin Yan was nowhere to be seen. Lin Yan had already sneaked away, while the two of them were arguing. She hadn't even driven. Now Lin Yan realized that evolved beings weren't necessarily smart. Although their brains had evolved, their intelligence hadn't. The two of them were obvious examples. Female thief, where are you running to? Suddenly, Zhang San and Li Si caught up with Lin Yan's car. Lin Yan was speechless. Was there no end to this? Li Si got out of the car and slapped Lin Yan. Before the palm arrived, the wind from the palm arrived first. The huge force made Lin Yan's heart tremble. She couldn't take this palm at all. At that moment, Lin Yan finally realized the huge difference between her and these two evolved beings. It could be described as a chasm. If they fought to the death, she would definitely be the one to die. How dare you? Just as Li Si was about to hit Lin Yan, a cold shout was heard. Li Si stopped what he was doing and looked around subconsciously. A few seconds later, a young man carrying a woman's bag walked over expressionlessly. Xiaofeng. The corners of Lin Yan's mouth twitched as she looked at He Lufeng. Why had he run over? He was even carrying the bag that she had left in the office. The Hunters Guild is really audacious. He Lufeng glanced at Zhang San and Li Si calmly. My words have fallen on deaf ears. Who are you? Zhang San placed his hands on his waist and glared at He Lufeng arrogantly. Huh. The corners of He Lufeng's mouth curled up as a cold glint flashed across his eyes. There are clouds beyond the 9 heavens. There are clouds beyond the 9 heavens? Li Si's face was full of confusion. There are many clouds within the clouds to make it rain. Shut your dog mouth. Zhang San glared at Li Si before turning to He Lufeng again. He frowned deeply. There are clouds beyond the 9th heaven. Beyond the 9th heaven? The 9th heaven? Your surname is Xiao. He Lufeng sneered coldly. Zhang San became even more cautious. May I ask which of the 3 heavenly fairies you are? He Lufeng was speechless. He Lufeng was dumbfounded. What 9 heavens? What 3 heavens? How would he know? He had chased after Lin Yan because she had left in a hurry without her bag. However, he had realized that Lin Yan was behaving strangely when she drove. She wouldn't even answer his calls. He had been worried and had ended up encountering this situation. What Hunters Guild? What evolved beings? He didn't understand a single word. Seeing that his sister was in danger, he could only pretend to be the boss and take a gamble. Which of the 3 heavenly fairies are you? Chapter 841. Although He Lufeng's expression didn't change, he was panicking deep down. Which sky? What did that mean? 3 Xiao. Eating lantern dumplings? Eating supper? Was it similar to the three shao? That didn't seem to be the case. It wasn't as though he was making up a sentence. He Lufeng and Lin Yan were panicking as well. Why had this brat come and join in the fun? She couldn't protect herself against these two lunatics, so she couldn't protect him. Lin Yan would rather be in danger than see anything happen to He Lufeng. Sir. Zhang San frowned when he saw He Lufeng's silence. His expression darkened. Eat lantern dumplings during the lantern festival. He Lufeng bellowed coldly. Great three shao. Lin Yan was completely dumbfounded when she heard He Lufeng. Even Zhang San had a baffled look on his face. Eat lantern dumplings during the lantern festival? What did he mean? No. Isn't that right? He Lufeng broke out in a cold sweat. He knew that something was wrong. How could he have guessed correctly? However, he could only make a wild guess. Which one of the three shao are you? Zhang San felt that something was amiss, and his tone turned cold. Three shao. I'm free and unfettered. He Lufeng, who was flustered, started to ramble. Before he could finish, Zhang San's expression changed as he sized He Lufeng up in surprise. So it's second master. My apologies. This time, we didn't understand the situation clearly. Please forgive us, second master. We'll scram now. After Zhang San finished speaking, he pulled Li Si, who was beside him, and left. Zhang San, why are you running? After a while, Li Si asked in confusion. Fool. Idiot. Stupid pig. Zhang San glared at Li Si. He's the second master of the ninth heaven, Xiao Yao. Didn't you hear him? I'm Xiao Yao. Huh. Xiao Yao. Li Si's eyes were filled with shock. He Lufeng stood rooted to the ground as his eyes darted around. Sister, have they left? Yes. Lin Yan nodded. Sister, hurry. Help me up. I can't take it anymore. I'm scared to death. He Lufeng sat on the ground, his body shaking nonstop. Lin Yan stepped forward and helped him up. Who asked you to come? What if something happened? He Lufeng passed his bag to Lin Yan. Something has happened. Something huge has happened. You're my sister, so I have to help. Lin Yan was speechless. Sigh. Sister, how did you provoke those people? Who are they? Are they superhumans? Oh my god, they can control other people's actions. Is that for real? And what does the Hunters Guild do? Do they hunt? He Lufeng had too many questions. Lin Yan didn't know how to explain this to He Lufeng. Oh my god, I was scared to death just now. Our boss's surname is too useful. Also, what did they call me just now, second master? Did I say anything? I can eat yuan shao during the lantern festival. I'm free and unfettered. He Lufeng frowned. Before Lin Yan could respond, He Lufeng hurriedly said, Yes, yes, yes. Let's go. We can't stay here for long. If they return, we'll be in big trouble. He Lufeng seemed to have been frightened out of his wits. His face was pale, and he was extremely cautious. It was already late when she sent He Lufeng home. After calling Qi Xiaoyuan to explain the situation, the two of them could only meet again to discuss the details. Chapter 842. Cloud Manor. Pei Nanxiu, Pei Yutang, Qin Huan, Xing Chun, and Ling Yu stood helplessly in the living room. Pei Nanxiu pinched his forehead. Sorry, I couldn't persuade him. Big brother was discharged early in the morning, so I could only invite Professor Tan here just in case. Pei Yutang scratched his head in frustration. Your body is already in such a state. If you don't rest, you will die young. Pei Yutang seemed to realize that his words were inauspicious, so he hurriedly muttered, A child's words carry no harm. A child's words carry no harm. For the first time, Pei Yutang felt a little guilty. Second brother, am I being a little selfish? If I could help big brother, he wouldn't have to work so hard. Qin Huan raised an eyebrow. Third young master, please don't think that way. Not getting involved in the company's affairs is already the greatest help you can give brother you. Pei Yutang felt as though his intelligence had been insulted. F***ck. Qin Huan, what do you mean? Tell me clearly. Pei Nanxiu shook his head helplessly. Alright, stop arguing. Let's think of a way to persuade big brother. Although I can help big brother with some miscellaneous matters, Big Brother is the only one who can handle the core matters. No one can replace him. Pei Nanshu sighed softly and added, JM Corporation might look like it's on fire, but it's actually a turbulent undercurrent. Once something happens to Big Brother, the entire group and family will be shaken. Moreover, there are many people outside who hope that the foundation of this stabilizing force will be shaken. Pei Yutong muttered under his breath. Even though that's true, how can my body take it if I continue to overexert myself? Ling Yu, who had been silent all this while, interjected. Why don't you ask Sister Yin to persuade him? I think Brother Yu will listen to her. Xing Chen said. Second young master has already looked for Miss Lin. Miss Lin has also tried to persuade him, but it was useless. Qin Huan shrugged nonchalantly. Although Brother Yu will definitely listen to Sister Yen, he is so intelligent that he managed to coax Sister Yen with just a few words. I can't persuade her. Pei Yutong glanced at Qin Huan meaningfully. This has nothing to do with intelligence, right? It's mainly about looks. Think about it. Who can resist my big brother's honey trap? Besides, Sister Yen has always been timid in front of Big Brother. Qin Huan and the others could not refute that. Ling Yu also had a headache. Then what should we do? But he couldn't just do nothing. Professor Tan had said that Brother Yu's physical condition had stabilized, and he hadn't broken through the critical point for a long time. But I've lost control too many times before, and I've used up too much of my energy. My body might not be able to take it at any time, and I need to rest. Qin Huang glanced at Pei Yutong. There's no other way. We can only let Miss Lin try to persuade him. Third young master, give her another call. Pei Yutong looked bitter. Sister-in-law has been very busy lately. I can't guarantee that I can get her to help. Pei Yutong made a call after he spoke. Hello, third young master? What's up? Ling Yan's voice came through the phone. Pei Yutong hurriedly replied. Nothing. I just wanted to snitch on you. Ling Yan asked, snitch? Pei Yutong replied. Big Brother's checkup results aren't optimistic. He's exhausted, and the doctor wants him to stay in the hospital to recuperate. However, he didn't listen to the doctor and ran out of the hospital early in the morning. None of us dared to persuade him. Big sister-in-law, can you help persuade him? End of chapter. Chapter 843. Ling Yan, who was puzzled, asked, Overworked my body? How is that possible? I've been following Mr. Pei's instructions while I've been staying there. I've been keeping an eye on your brother's daily life. Although he is occasionally busy and works late, he sleeps and eats on time most of the time. I know that he has been undergoing a checkup recently, so I asked him about it last night. Your brother told me that everything is fine, and he seems to be in good spirits. The corners of Pei Yutong's mouth twitched. Daddy, you have to be more careful. Besides, given Big Brother's intelligence, it would be easy for him to lie to you. What do you mean by everything is fine? His body is full of problems. Second brother and I were chatted with Professor Tan for more than 3 hours this morning. He said that his body has reached its limit, and that he is merely holding on with his willpower. He could collapse at any moment, and his fever has been going on for days. How could that be? Lin Yan frowned when she heard that Pei Yutong didn't seem to be lying. Where is your brother now? Pei Yutong replied. He was just discharged from the hospital. I asked Chung Mo to send all his work documents and documents home. Lin Yan nodded. Got it. I'll go back and take a look. Pei Yutong heaved a sigh of relief when he heard that. However, he was worried when he recalled how cowardly Lin Yan was. All right then. I hope my brother will listen to you. Half an hour later, Lin Yan rushed over in her old car. Where's Mr. Pei? Lin Yan scanned the living room and saw that Pei Yutong, Pei Nanshu, and the others were all there. Everyone looked worried. In the corner of the living room, there was a professor in a white coat and his assistant. She had seen Pei Yuqing the last time he had lost control. He should be Pei Yutong's personal doctor. The two of them were looking at a stack of reports with worried expressions on their faces. In the study, replied Pei Nanshu. Is it really that serious? Lin Yan frowned. Pei Yutong nodded vigorously. If we could beat him, Professor Tan would have suggested that we kidnap him and take him to the hospital. Lin Yin imagined fighting with Pei Yutong and shuddered uncontrollably. I'll go and take a look. Lin Yin still felt that something was amiss. Is Professor Tan reliable? I've been observing your brother. He seems to be in a good state of mind. It doesn't seem like what you said. Pei Yutong was exasperated. Of course my brother is in a good state of mind when he's in front of you. How can he not be in a good state when he's in a relationship? Lin Yin was speechless. How could that be? Pei Yutong added. However, this doesn't change the fact that his body is riddled with holes. Before you came, Big Brother lost control too many times. Every time he lost control, his body suffered a great loss. It's not an exaggeration to say that his body is riddled with holes. Pei Nanxiu added, I hope that Miss Lin can persuade Big Brother to stay in the hospital for a while. Lin Yin scratched her head. I'll try my best. You know that I might not be able to persuade him. He was the CEO of a multinational corporation and the head of the Pei family. How could she make him listen to her? Besides, given Pei Yuqing's powerful aura, she was afraid of him. Chapter 844. Lin Yin glanced at the people behind her before she walked to the study and knocked on the door helplessly. Come in. Lin Yin pushed the door open softly when she heard the man's hoarse voice. The man was sitting in front of the desk with his back to the light. He was wearing a tailored retro custom-made suit, and his white shirt was buttoned up to the first button of his collar. On his face was a pair of simple gold-rimmed glasses, and the sunlight behind him shone through the white curtains, giving the man a light golden halo. Behind the glasses, his eyes were as mysterious and unfathomable as the deep sea. Pei Yuqing raised his head when he heard her footsteps. Miss Lin. Pei Yuqing seemed surprised that Lin Yin would come home at this time. He looked suspicious. Lin Yin shook her head and retracted her gaze. She scrutinized the man carefully. Pei Yutong's eyes, which were deep and unfathomable, shone as brightly as the galaxy when he lifted his head. He gently lifted the curtains behind him, and his eyes seemed to be filled with lust. Lin Yin studied him, but she didn't think that Pei Yuqing was as sick as Pei Yutong had described him to be. He was clearly working in a composed manner, and he didn't look tired at all. He seemed to be in a good mood. Instinctively, Lin Yin recalled what Pei Yutong had said to her, and the corners of her mouth twitched. He had said that he was in a good mood because he was in love with her. That was a ridiculous reason. No matter how miraculous she couldn't be cured with just one look. What's wrong? The corners of Pei Yutong's mouth curled up when he noticed that Lin Yin was staring at him intently. His eyes gleamed with amusement. Lin Yin coughed awkwardly and snapped back to her senses. Nothing. I just heard that you were busy with work, and that you had a fever. I was worried about you, Mr. Pei. Pei Yuqing glanced behind Lin Yin and saw Pei Yutong and the others hiding behind her. Pei Yuqing chuckled softly. Don't worry. I'm fine. My fever has subsided. Lin Yin scratched her head. Really? Do you feel any discomfort anywhere else? Have you felt weak, dizzy, blurred vision, or inexplicable pain recently? Pei Yuqing shook his head. Did Yutong and Nanshi tell you something? Don't worry. I know my own body the best. They were the ones who were exaggerating. Pei Yuqing's words always made people instinctively believe him. Lin Yin pondered his words and agreed with him. Given his status and identity, his health was too important. It was inevitable that the people around him would be nervous. They had made it sound so serious, but she had been here for so long. Pei Yuqing had never lost control. He was even gentler and more patient than an ordinary person. Are you really fine? If you can't handle it, you can't force yourself. Lin Yin was still worried. The stars in Pei Yuqing's eyes seemed to sparkle. Are you worried about me? Ahem. Lin Yin, who felt uneasy, muttered. Of course I'm worried. Although part of it was because of Pei Yutong and Pei Nanxi's request, she herself was worried. Chapter 845. I'm glad that you're worried about me. However, I'm fine. Haven't you been busy lately? Just focus on your work. I'll call you if I need any help, replied Pei Yuqing. Pei Yuqing was simply too gentle and caring. Lin Yin felt a little grateful for that lecture. What kind of boyfriend had he found for her? He was simply too perfect. Besides, that fellow hadn't appeared in a long time. Hence, she seemed to be the one enjoying this peerless boyfriend most of the time. Lin Yin had already confirmed that Pei Yuqing was fine. Pei Yutong and the others must be making a fuss over nothing. Even Pei Yutong and the others, who were hiding at the door, began to doubt themselves. Big Brother did look fine. Could Dr. Tan have made a mistake in his diagnosis? Xing Chun, who seemed to have guessed what Pei Yutong wanted to say, interrupted him as he unwrapped a lollipop. Don't doubt Dr. Tan's professionalism. Otherwise he will pick up a scalpel and fight you. Qin Huan chuckled. However, you can't blame third young master. Brother Yu is too good at pretending. Back then, he had broken dozens of bones in his body, and half of his internal organs were damaged. His life was hanging by a thread, but he was still able to lie in bed and watch the live broadcast. He even made some professional comments. It was as though he was on vacation. In the study, Lin Yin believed that Pei Yuqing was fine after he comforted her. However, for some reason, Lin Yin didn't heave a sigh of relief. Instead, she felt inexplicably uneasy. Are you really fine? Then, I'll leave now. Go ahead. Okay. Lin Yin strode to the door of the study. When she was about to reach the door, she instinctively turned around to glance at Pei Yuqing. The man continued to flip through the documents on the table. His expression and state were flawless. Damn it. Why was she still worried? Was she really overthinking? Lin Yin realized miserably that her concern had messed up her thoughts. This unfamiliar feeling inexplicably made her a little flustered. Lin Yan's heart was in turmoil, and she couldn't calm down. When Lin Yin stepped out of the study, she spun around abruptly. She paused for less than 2 seconds before she retraced her steps and headed for the desk. Pei Yuqing glanced at Lin Yin suspiciously. What's wrong? Pei Yuqing wasn't the only one. The few people hiding at the door also turned to look at Lin Yin curiously. Why did he go back? Lin Yan's heart was in a mess, as though a kitten was rolling on the floor. She stared at the man's mesmerizing face as her footsteps quickened. She strode over to Pei Yuqing's desk. Lin Yan's eyes didn't blink as she stared at the man before her. Pei Yuqing said, Lin. Before Pei Yuqing could finish, Lin Yin slammed her hand against his desk. A second later, she reached out with her other hand and grabbed the back of Pei Yuqing's neck. The man's short hair tickled her palm, making her even more confused. However, Lin Yin didn't stop. Instead, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his as he stared at her in shock. Pei Yuqing wasn't the only one who was shocked. Pei Yutong and the others were startled by Lin Yan's sudden action. What was going on? Chapter 846. Lin Yan had just touched Pei Yuqing's forehead when she felt his scalding heat travel from his forehead to her skin. It was so hot. It was so hot that it couldn't be considered a normal human body temperature. Lin Yan's expression changed instantly. All the messy thoughts in her heart seemed to have been cut off by a sharp knife, and all that was left was a mess. Lin Yan immediately extended her hand and placed it on Pei Yuqing's forehead again to confirm it. It was scalding hot. You have a fever. Lin Yan pressed her forehead against Pei Yuqing's. Her heart felt as though it had been set on fire by the man's forehead, and her face was frosty. Pei Yuqing, you have a fever, and you're telling me that your fever has subsided? Lin Yan had always been respectful in front of Pei Yuqing. This was the first time she had been so angry at Pei Yuqing. Her attitude had been so harsh. This was also the first time Lin Yan had called Pei Yuqing by his name. Pei Yuqing was stunned by the girl's burning gaze. For the first time in his life, he felt a little guilty. He fell silent and didn't know how to respond. Lin Yan was about to explode with rage. What was wrong with this man? To think that he acted as if nothing had happened, as if nothing had happened, as if nothing had happened, and as if nothing had happened. His fever had subsided? How could it have subsided? He was about to boil. He was so sick, yet he was pretending that nothing was wrong. She had almost been deceived into thinking that he was fine. So Pei Yutong was telling the truth. He had really been seriously ill. A normal person with a fever wouldn't even be able to walk properly, let alone a fever that hadn't subsided for a few days. How could he still sit here and handle such complicated affairs? Fluttering. It's just a fever, Pei Yuqing muttered after some time. Lin Yan was even more furious when she heard him. A fever? Just a fever? Your forehead is so hot that you can cook an egg. Lin Yan reached out and touched Pei Yuqing's forehead, neck, and hand. She said coldly, "My entire body is burning. How could you tell me that you're fine? You must go to the hospital immediately." Pei Yuqing watched as the girl flew into a rage. His eyes were as gentle as water as he gazed at the girl's tiny hand. He slowly tightened his grip and held the girl's fingers gently. Then, he lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "I'm really fine. Don't worry, okay?" Lin Yan's fingers felt as though they had been scalded, and the warmth spread throughout her entire body. The frost on Lin Yan's face almost melted away. After some time, she snapped back to her senses and gritted her teeth as she glared at the man. "Don't try to seduce me. I won't fall for it. You must go to the hospital today." The man in front of her had crushed a pool of starlight in his eyes, and his voice was low and hoarse. "Are you sure?" Chapter 847. The five of them watched helplessly as Lin Yan returned and exposed Pei Yuqing. She had even forced him to stop working. Lin Yan grabbed Pei Yuqing's hand and led him to the master bedroom, which she rarely entered. The style of this bedroom was very similar to Pei Yuqing's. It was black, white, and gray, and it was cold and otherworldly. After settling Pei Yuqing down, Lin Yan walked to the bedroom and glanced at Pei Yutong and the others. "Where's the doctor?" They snapped out of their daze and hurriedly called Professor Tan over. "President Pei is willing to treat him?" Professor Tan looked surprised, but he was still worried. His old body was rotting, so he didn't dare approach President Pei. Lin Yan's mind was filled with Pei Yuqing's scorching heat. She felt a little impatient as she pinched her temples. "Go and take a look. If it doesn't work, I'll use force." Everyone was horrified when they heard her. Pei Yutong looked flustered. What do you mean?" Lin Yan glanced at him. "What else could I mean? At most we'll fight." She didn't know if it was an illusion, but she realized that her physical abilities seemed to be improving. If she really fought with Pei Yuqing, she would at least be able to exchange a few blows with him. Professor Tan was speechless. Pei Yutong replied, "Air." This was the first time Pei Yutong had seen Lin Yan so violent, so he couldn't help but be shocked. The others exchanged looks and fell silent. "Go in," Lin Yan said. Professor Tan hesitated, but he instinctively obeyed Lin Yan's order. Professor Tan had just pushed the door open when he met the pair of oppressive eyes on the bed. He instinctively took a step back. Lin Yan poured a glass of warm water and placed it on Pei Yuqing's bed. She then scanned Pei Yuqing's clothes. Although he had taken off his jacket, he was still wearing a formal suit and a tie. He looked very uncomfortable. "Doctor, did he take his medicine?" Lin Yan asked Professor Tan, as she reached for Pei Yuqing's collar and removed his tie. Then she unbuttoned his white shirt. Pei Yuqing merely raised his eyebrows. He didn't resist at all. When Lin Yan couldn't undo the second button, he even helped her unbutton it. At the same time, the terrifying pressure between the man's brows instantly disappeared without a trace. The way they interacted with each other was as natural as an old married couple. Pei Yutong and the others were speechless when they saw this scene. Qin Huan looked astonished as he whispered into Pei Yutong's ear. "Didn't you say that Brother Yu and Miss Lin are like strangers? He even said that Miss Lin was timid in front of Brother Yu? It doesn't seem to be the case at all." Pei Yutong was confused as well. "Don't ask me. I'm confused too." Professor Tan keenly sensed that the pressure had disappeared, So he carefully walked to the bed. Professor Tan took Pei Yuqing's temperature and examined him carefully. He looked worried and worried. "How is it?" asked Lin Yan. Professor Tan glanced at Pei Yuqing, as though he didn't dare to speak. Lin Yan's face hardened. "Why are you looking at him? Tell me the truth." End of this chapter. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.